I was just reading a book. All of a sudden I heard a guy screaming. I turned around and the guy sitting right next beside me was standing up and stabbing another guy with a Rambo knife, pretty much. It was a big survival knife like this in the throat, repeatedly. Told everybody to get off the bus. Everybody started to get off the bus. The guy still kept stabbing him. Everybody got off the bus. Me and the trucker that had stopped and the Greyhound driver ran up to the door to maybe see if the guy was still alive or we could help or something like that. And when we all got up, we seen that the guy was cutting off the guy's head. He was cutting off the guy's head there, and he saw us. He came back to the front of the bus, told the driver to...
I saw Nope this weekend, and I couldn't help but think that part of the story might have been inspired by true events. Travis the Chimp was an animal actor who appeared in commercials and TV. He was adopted by Sandra Harold at 3 days old and was basically raised as a child. He ate at the dinner table, did chores, wore clothes, and loved baseball. At around age 14, he started showing signs of aggression. On February 16, 2009, Sandra's close friend Charlotte Nash came over to help get Travis back in the house when he escaped with her car keys. She had known him since he was a baby and was holding his favorite toy, a Tickle Me Elmo, when he went into a rage. He broke almost all of the bones in her face, removed one of her hands, tore off her eyelids, nose, jaw, lips, and most of her scalp. Sandra tried to stab him to stop him, but it didn't work. When police arrived, Travis was shot to death. Charlotte miraculously survived, but she was left permanently blind and disfigured. This was a scene that really made me notice the similarities. What do you guys think?
Blood-curdling facts that you wish you never knew. Part 35. This creature is known as a woolly monkey, and due to poachers and people trading and selling them illegally, there's only 1,000 of these little guys left in the world. The uncanny valley is a phenomenon in which people become fearful at things that are very close to human, but something isn't quite right. Throughout history, mummies actually weren't that rare, that is, until the Victorian British ate so many of them. During the Arctic exploration, one of the scientists was complaining that his shoes were soaking wet. Later, when he took them off, he found this was because his feet were decaying and liquidized with his blood. A man once donated his recently deceased mother's body for scientific research. Later, he discovered that the research facility sold it to the US Army for $5 grand, strapped it to a chair, and blew it up with explosives.
Explaining the backstory to viral videos.
The young lady in this viral video is Victoria Mendoza, who was 22 years old when she attacked her girlfriend of 5 years, 21-year-old Tawny Bird. While driving home from visiting friends, the couple got into an argument over a boy, and Victoria proceeded to pull over on the interstate and stab Tawny 46 times. She then called her sister, Spencer Mendoza, who arrived to find Victoria calmly sitting next to her dead girlfriend. Mendoza was charged with first-degree murder and was sent to the Utah State Prison, where she was allowed visitation rights. But due to social distancing, these visits were virtual on Zoom, which led to a friend of Victoria's recording videos of her that went viral on TikTok. She eventually lost visitation privileges and is currently serving 16 years in prison.
Alright, it's time to explain this video.
Dead. He's dead, man. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh boy, oh boy. You don't feel bad about it? No. Would you do it again? Yes.
So her name is Cynthia Sidabaka. On February 11th of 2014, she shot and killed her son-in-law. Prior to her crime, Cynthia suffered a very bad stroke. Because of this, she moved in with her daughter and her son-in-law, and they did not get along. They were always on each other's nerves. Apparently, on the day of the crime, Cynthia and her son-in-law got in a big fight. It was actually on Cynthia's birthday. Cynthia also said that since living with her son-in-law, she noticed that he would physically and emotionally abuse her daughter and the 2 children. So to her, she thought she was saving the daughter and children. I'm not justifying her actions at all, but this is why she was so happy. She thought she saved her family.
Most unusual deaths in human history. Yuroko Onaja was in the middle of having sex with his 6th wife when his other wives caught him and became jealous. They forced him to do it with each of them, and he stopped breathing before he could get to the 5th wife. A 32-year-old man from Florida, Edward Archibald, died from choking on arthropod body parts in a cockroach eating contest. When 25-year-old Salman Mirza met up with his ex-fiancée at a hotel in India, he realized that he didn't have protection. Salman then proceeded to seal up his pee-pee using a strong glue, causing him to die of organ failure. This past Halloween, a Brazilian man was fishing with his two friends when all of a sudden they were attacked by bees. The man attempted to escape by jumping into a nearby lake where he was attacked by piranhas and died. 42-year-old Tony Isles was in a McDonald's drive-thru when he dropped his credit card. He opened his door to retrieve it when his car rolled forward, pinning him between the door and the car, crushing him to death.
911, what's the address of your emergency?
Hi, 1313 Esther Drive, Boulder City, Nevada.
And what's the problem? Tell me exactly what happened.
My name is Hans Walters. I work for Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. I just shot and killed my son Max and my wife Michelle, and I killed her because she's in such a chronic pain from her neck and back and on more medicines that she's not going to survive. I've also set the house on fire, and if the fire department comes to my house, because there's a fire hydrant right in front of my house, I'm going to open fire on them. So I have to wait till the house is burning, and then I'm going to shoot myself, okay? So
okay,
I don't ask me any questions. This is real. This isn't a joke. The fire alarms in the background is because I set the garage and the bedroom on fire. My wife's in the bedroom. I shot her in the head. My son, unfortunately, is in the living room watching Oswald, and I shot him in the head, too. And, forgive me for my sins. Please don't call back. Thank you.
In 2022, the town of Slaughter, Louisiana, was shaken by the death of 36-year-old Lacey Fletcher. Lacey suffered from a medical condition known as locked-in syndrome, making her almost completely paralyzed. Due to her medical condition, Lacey spent all of her life at home, as she began to develop some degree of Asperger's syndrome. Lacey's parents were her caretakers, although they neglected that responsibility and treated Lacey inhumanely, leaving her to relieve herself on the same couch that she spent most of her life. Lacey's neighbors stated that the last time they saw her in public was 15 years before this incident. At the time of her death, Lacey weighed 96 pounds and had contracted COVID-19. On January 3rd, 2022, Lacey was found dead in a couch covered in feces and urine. It was believed that she was in that same spot for years without being catered to. Her body was covered in ulcers, her hair matted and filled with maggots. Her parents, Sheila and Clay Fletcher, were charged with second-degree murder and detained for the severe chronic neglect. Despite all of this, they pleaded not guilty and were released on bail. Sheila and Clay Fletcher will begin trial on June 19th, 2023.
This is why you should be scared of that one person you're talking to online that you're about to meet in real life. Blanca Arellano, a 51-year-old Mexican woman, was looking for love. She met a Peruvian man named Juan Villafuerte on an online gaming app. And on the last day of October, she traveled 3,000 miles to Lima, Peru to meet him. She thought that he could be the one. On November 7th, while in the beach city of Huacho, where Villafuerte lived, Blanca spoke to her niece on the phone and told her that the relationship was going well and that she was in love. Then she went silent. Her niece suspected something was wrong after not being able to get into contact with her. She called for help on Twitter and reached out to Juan Villafuerte, who said that Blanca got bored of him and left to find a plane ticket back to Mexico, as he could not provide the life she wanted. But the truth was much, much darker. On November 10th, Peruvian authorities found a severed finger on the beach of Huacho. Then in the following days, they found a faceless head, and then an arm, and then a torso with no organs inside of it. They eventually identified Blanca Arellano via her family by the ring on her finger. Juan Villafuerte was arrested on charges of human organs trafficking. Authorities found traces of blood all over his apartment, and he reportedly posted TikTok videos of human organs days after Blanca's disappearance.
A few things that jump out at me. Number one is just, and this isn't saying innocent or guilt or anything, just a human emotion watching this video, is the size of Matt Farwell versus the size of Sandra Birchmore. He looks almost twice her size. I don't know. I think Matt looks like he's 6'3" or 6'4". He walks in fast. He has a mask on, which is more of a COVID mask, not a traditional winter mask. Walks in fast, head down. hits the button to go up to the third floor, goes in. That, by the way, doesn't mean he killed Sandra Birchmore. The fact that he was in this relationship with her and he was a police officer essentially in that town, my guess is he was not going to be lounging around the hallways there before he goes in. So I get that. And when he leaves fast. I think the other thing that jumps out to me, if I had to rank them, is what we kind of suspected all along. It was interesting to watch Sandra as a 23-year-old would be. And, I have a teenage daughter, essentially. So, I mean, she's a teenager, same thing. She has the phone attached to her the entire time. She's talking, she's texting. She's got her phone with her the entire time. Each time you see her, she's got the phone with her. Which, to me, again, is the biggest red flag for me in the entire story, is the idea that she never contacted another human being again after Matt left that night. After we saw Matt leave, she didn't respond or send a message to anybody. The storyline that the police want you to believe, or do believe, is that Matt left and she essentially was so upset that she killed herself right there without contacting anybody. Obviously I don't believe that. They do.
I was dismembered and turned into TV furniture by my son. My name is William Spiller, and this is my horrifying story. At the time of the incident, I worked as a taxi driver and lived with my 28-year-old son, Nathan Robinson, in an apartment in Bournemouth, England. We often had arguments as my son still lived under my roof without taking care of his own expenses. He owed me a substantial sum of £36,000. On May 16, 2013, we had another intense argument, but this one went beyond imagination. In a fit of madness, Nathan killed me and armed himself with a utility knife and 2 small hacksaws to meticulously dismember my heavily built body. The horror didn't end there. He then stored my body parts in plastic storage boxes, stacking them to create a TV furniture piece. He even placed my head in a desk drawer. In the afternoon, my downstairs neighbor noticed pink liquid dripping from the ceiling, a mix of my blood and a cleaning product. Having also heard our argument, the neighbor came upstairs and knocked on our door. Nathan calmly answered, assuring that everything was fine and it was merely a dispute. Later, my son stole £8,000 from me and made a to-do list to avoid arousing suspicion about my death. He paid the rent, rented DIY equipment, and responded to my text messages. In a cruel twist of fate, he even received the DVD Say 7 and as a gift shortly afterward. Nathan continued to live his life as if nothing had happened, traveling, meeting people, and going out with friends. It was only a month later that my remains were discovered when one of my colleagues grew concerned about my absence. My girlfriend, Glenys Molino, with whom I had been in a relationship for 2 years, also became worried about not receiving any text messages from me and believed I was with a friend in the West Midlands County. The police then arrived at my apartment and were hit by the overwhelming smell and the presence of numerous flies. They subsequently went to Nathan's mother's house, where he was staying, in Birmingham. My son asked if it was a joke, but eventually confessed to the murder, claiming he was not in a normal state of mind at the time of the act. However, experts had conflicting opinions as he displayed a level of consciousness about his actions, particularly in creating an illusion of me being alive. Nathan's trial took place in 2014, and he was sentenced to life imprisonment.
One of the most successful serial killers in history is never talked about. Let's talk about Giulia Tofana, who was said to have killed around 600 men. That is a lot of men. There is little known about Giulia's life and upbringing. No pictures, nothing. This story takes place in the Renaissance period in Italy. Back then, women didn't really have any rights. Like, at all. They were usually forced into arranged, loveless marriages. In this time, when you got married, your husband owned you. Men had full ownership and control over their wives. Husbands would often beat their wives without any consequence. And unfortunately for the women, divorce was basically non-existent at the time. It wasn't even an option. So safe to say there was a lot of women stuck in abusive and loveless marriages with no way out. That's until Giulia started her little business. Giulia created an odorless, tasteless, and colorless, undetectable poison, and she put it in makeup products. She disguised her poison in beauty products that women could easily keep on their vanity and no one would question it. She called it Aqua Tofana. Pretty cool name. This product would allow women to discreetly kill their husbands over the span of 4 days. A few drops every day, and the initial symptoms would simply seem like a flu. A few more drops the next few days, and it would slowly weaken and eventually kill the men. You're probably wondering how she got away with killing all of these men without anybody noticing. Well, Julia was very careful. She didn't just sell Aqua Tofana to anyone. Any new client had to be verified by a past client and have a background check. Julia's clients were actually really protective over her as well and kept her secret. This went on for over 20 years. Julia would also coach the women on how to act around the days of the poison. After the first day, when the husband starts getting the flu symptoms, to act really concerned and call a doctor. The doctor would come and assume it was just a basic illness, give them medication, and leave. The key was that the women were the ones to call the doctor. They had to act concerned, anxious. When the husbands would eventually die, the doctors would be baffled. And the key to all this was that the women were told to demand an autopsy. But the thing about Aqua Tofana is that it was undetectable in an autopsy, meaning that all of these deaths came back as natural causes. Unfortunately, the story is too long for one video, so come back for part 2 to see what happens next.
Time. I hope you don't mind. Can't I see you again?